All right, let's jump in with police reform. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, and I've been talking about it really since the summer of 2020 with BLM and just just generally the pathetic performance of police, both in the Floyd case, in the case now, and of course during the BLM riots themselves. So and one of my main themes has been what we need is better trained policemen. We need to professionalize the police force. We need to increase training significantly. Our police are pathetic. It's not so much their fault. It's kind of the expectations that we place on them. Now, it is the fault of the particular police cop that beat up Tyree. I'm not dissolving them a fault. But the system as a whole is corrupt. See, I do agree with BLM in the end. The system as a whole is corrupt. There is systemic malfeasance here. There is a real problem with policing. And the problem is not, as it turns out, shockingly, what BLM thinks. It's not that there is too little money spent on policing. It's not that there's too much money spent on policing, as the Defund the Police would likely to believe. It's that there's too little money spent on policing. It's not, as the Defund the Police would argue, there are too many policemen. It's that there are too few policemen out there. The real problem is not that our police are overtrained, it's that they're undertrained, and significantly so. So I was really happy to see yesterday a story, I think it was yesterday, by Noah. He's got No Opinion, which is Noah Smith's Substack. I follow Noah Smith. He's kind of on Substack. He is a left of center. Who writes a lot about economics. I find him, first of all, I think he's one of the mostly honest of the left of center economists. I find a lot of what he writes interesting. But generally, it's valuable to follow these kind of people because this is the more reasonable enemy. So you better be able to answer their arguments if you're going to be able to defend capitalism, to defend liberty and freedom. You better be able to answer the objections that somebody like Noah Smith has, because he's going to have the more reasonable objections out there. And in addition, he often has really, really good pieces that are really, really interesting that I agree with to a large extent. And he had one 2 days ago, 3 days ago, well, 2 days ago, January 29th, on professionalizing the police, which I thought was interesting because one of the things he does is he goes out and gets the statistics. He saves me time to get some statistic about this, and it's really, really interesting. In terms of policing. So obviously defund the police was a complete failure, and increasing violent crime that followed the defund the police cry, where there was a direct consequence of defund the police or not, made defund the police politically untenable. Every single jurisdiction that actually, where they talked about defund the police, that initiative lost. New York elected Democrat, but a very, very pro-police Democrat. Eric Adams, Minneapolis, rejected the defund the police, even if they'd approved it initially. And generally, the increase in violent crime around the country has made defund the police and reduce funding for the police, reduce the number of police, just political suicide across the country, even in places like San Francisco. One of the things that's interesting is this movement that is of the left and of people who generally are great admirers of Europe. Didn't look at how many police European countries have relative to the United States, and it turns out, shockingly and surprisingly, that Europeans have a lot more police than the U.S. At least most Europe does. So police officers per capita per 100,000 people. The United States has 242 police officers per 100,000 people. Now, I don't know if this includes just state, federal, local. I assume it includes everything. 242 police per 100,000 people. Spain has more than double that. It has 534 police officers per 100,000 people. Portugal, 446. France, 422. Germany, 349. Austria, 335. Scotland, That's surprising. 318. Netherlands, 295. Ireland, 293. Australia, 264. So Australia is closest to the US. And then, yes, England and Wales have only 212. New Zealand has only 203. Sweden has only 198. Sweden might be regretting that fact and maybe needs to boost the number of cops there because of violent crime is on a significant uptick there. Denmark, 196, and Canada, only 184. So the United States does not exactly have a huge number of police. It is actually kind of a middle of the pack when it comes to Europe. And as a percentage of GDP, or as in terms of population, it's just not that impressive in terms of number of cops. In terms of the amount of money spent on policing as a percent of GDP, the United States is probably in the middle of the pack, maybe below the middle of the pack, on the low end, as compared to everything else. So U.S. doesn't spend a lot of money on police, and it doesn't have a lot of police. And then if you look at the number of police killings, the number of police killings per 10 million people. So how many police kill, guilty, innocent, just how many people do they kill? In the United States, they kill 28.54 people per 10 million. Canada, it's 9.7, Australia, 6.5, France is 3.8, Netherlands, 2.7, New Zealand, 2.1, Germany, 1.3, Portugal, 1, Sweden, 1, United Kingdom, 0.5, Denmark, basically 0. The police never kill anybody. Now, you could argue, as I'm sure many people argue, that the number of police killings in the United States is so high because we have so much more violent crime. But is that really the case? I mean, how many times have we seen police killings like Tyree, like George Floyd, where there was no violent crime involved? We see it quite a bit. Now, I'm sure the United States would have more police killings. It would have less police killings if it had less violent crime, no question about that. But we have 10 times more we have 10 times more police killings per 10 million people than the Netherlands. Much more than 10 times than New Zealand. 20 times, over 20 times more police killings than Germany. 28, almost 30 times more than Portugal or Sweden. We have more violent crime than they do, but not 30 times more, not 10 times more. It's just not the case. So maybe we're not spending enough on police, and I'm not talking about spending enough on police in terms of weapon systems and things like that. We spend a ton on police in terms of arming them for the next revolution. I'm talking about spending money on police in terms of number of cops on the street. Maybe if you increase the number of cops, there'd be fewer killings, actually. Maybe if you increase the number of police, there'd be less crime if they were just more visible in the neighborhoods. And this is the killer. Maybe if you actually increase police training, there'd be fewer killings. So we have the fewest number, we don't have the fewest. We have the average number of police, an average number of, we spend an average amount of money as compared to European countries on police, probably below average in terms of money. We have police that are clearly acting irresponsibly and unprofessionally. You saw that in the Tyree case, unprofessionally and almost criminally, one could argue. But we've got fewer police, so maybe we train them more. Maybe the fewer police, we train more. No. So Finland requires their police to go through 5,500 hours of training. 5,500 hours of training in order to become a policeman. In Germany, it's 4,000. In Australia, it's 3,500. In England, it's, I don't know, somewhere around just under 2,500. In Canada, it's 1,000. In the US, 550. To become a cop in the United States, on average, you need to go through 550 hours of police training. A tenth, 1/10 of what the Finnish you have to do for Finland. Somebody said it was streaming on the Salem Center. Are we really? I've got it off. It shouldn't be streaming. Why is it streaming there? God. All right, I'm gonna. Why is it streaming there? All right, sorry. Wow. This is, should be pretty straightforward. I toggled off. Anyway, we spend a tenth of what the Finnish spend. We spend about half of what the Canadians spend. We spend a fifth of what the British spend, an eighth of what the Germans spend per cop on training. That's truly unbelievable. And is it a surprise then that our cops go rogue, that our cops do really, really stupid things, that our cops kill people that they shouldn't be killing, that our cops just behave irrationally, and then when they are needed, like during the riots, the BLM riots, they can't do their job. They can't control a riot. They're just undertrained. They're not under-resourced. They're undertrained. And it's not an issue that we can't afford it. It's not an issue of money. It's not an issue of how much money we spend. We have the resources to do it. Think about all the waste that we expend. Including, by the way, you could easily take this from the military budget and use it here, and it would be a good trade-off. We probably have so much waste in the military budget that we could easily do this. Or compare how much we require police to be trained as compared to how much we require plumbers in order to get a plumbing license. In order to get a plumbing license, now this is absurd in and of itself. In order to get a plumbing license I guess on average in a state in the United States, you have to do 3,500 hours of training. In order to be a cosmetologist, you need to spend 3,000 hours of training to be a cosmetologist. To be a police officer in the United States of America, 550 hours. 550 hours of training. I mean, if that's not absurd and nutty and crazy and insane, I don't know what is. It's not even funny. It's truly disgusting and ridiculous. So to shampoo hair, you need more training than to be a cop. Again, no surprise, Tyree or anybody else who's been assaulted by the police. No surprise. They don't know what they're doing. They have not been trained. They have not been given the educational resources to do this. Now, this is not going to change. Now, why is this not going to change? Who is the biggest lobbyer not to increase training? Well, the police union. They want more money, less training. More money, less headache. Sadly, it's the police who are doing this. Yes, Scott, blame the victim, as always. Blame the victim. Yep, it's the victim's fault, always. Don't blame the actual person who engages in the assault. Don't engage in the person actually doing the killing. Blame the victim. That's good. That's good. Typical Scott. Makes me angry. 550 hours of training for a police officer. 3,000 for cosmologist, 3,500 for plumber. That's all you really need to know. We need more police. We need more money spent on policing. And we need a lot more money, and a lot more time spent on training. And that just should pop out to you in the numbers. It's just there. There shouldn't even be any question about that. No question about it. It's just not even an issue here. Police officers should have much more training than a plumber. They should be 10x the amount of training. How to diffuse a situation, how to overcome somebody who's being violent without killing them. I mean, I could easily fill up the curriculum. It's not that hard. But the solution today in America is let's just beat them to death. Or let's just not engage. Or let's just not do our jobs. All right, I mean, there's a lot that can be said about this, but training like getting police to communicate more, explain their actions, respond to concerns. When you're pulled over by the police, often you are stressed, you are scared, maybe you're even angry. It's the police job. They are the trained, supposedly, professional who's supposed to be the calming element, who's supposed to be there and calm the situation down, explain what you've done wrong, explain how you remedy the situation. I mean, when I just get stopped for a traffic stop, clearly my heart rate goes up. And what do I have to worry about? Nothing's going to happen to me, and yet, what the hell? Why is he stopping me? What's going on? And then, me being confused and not sure exactly what's going on and why the police are stopping me and stressing over it. It's my fault if I get beaten to death, Scott? God. So, yes, they need to get trained and better communicate, explain their actions, respond to their concerns. They need to be able to subdue somebody without having to resort to mortal force and so on. But anyway. Thank you for listening or watching the Yaron Brook Show. If you'd like to support the show, we make it as easy as possible for you to trade with me. You get value from listening. You get value from watching. Show your appreciation. You can do that by going to yaronbrookshow.com/support, by going to Patreon, Subscribestar, Locals, and just making a appropriate contribution on any one of those channels. Also, if you'd like to see the Yaron Brook Show grow, please consider sharing our content and, of course, subscribe. Press that little bell button right down there on YouTube so that you get an announcement when we go live. And for those of you who are already subscribers and those of you who are already supporters of the show, thank you. I very much appreciate it.